Okay, welcome everybody to this episode of Zoom In with Daniel Root. And today we're going to be focusing on a really critical issue, gadolinium toxicity. For years, patients have reported devastating symptoms while the medical establishment has dismissed or minimized the reality. In this session, I'll show you why gadolinium retention is real, how it harms the body, and most importantly, how detoxination provides a pathway forward. Before we dive deeper, let's take a step back and ask what exactly is gadolinium? Well, it's a rare earth metal, part of the lanthanide series on the periodic table. In medicine, gadolinium is used in contrast agents for MRIs because of its powerful magnetic properties. When it's inside the body, it helps radiologists see tissues, blood vessels, and lesions much more clearly, essentially making them light up on the scan. Now, here's the critical point. In its raw form, gadolinium is highly toxic. That's why it's bound or chelated to other molecules in these contrast agents to make it safer and help it clear quickly. But as we'll see throughout this presentation, it doesn't always clear. Sometimes it stays, sometimes it dechelates, and sometimes it deposits in brain, bone, and tissues. And that's where the problems begin. Most people think of gadolinium exposure as something that only happens in hospital during an MRI with contrast. And yes, that's the major source. But what really surprises me, and will probably surprise you, is just how many other places gadolinium shows up. So let's break it down. There's the obvious one, which is medical in the form of gadolinium-based contrast agents, or GBCAs, used in MRI scans. But there are also certain pharmaceuticals where gadolinium is a component. This is where it gets concerning, though. Gadolinium can be found in food additives and, believe it or not, in many everyday electronics. It's used in semiconductors, LEDs, and magnets. And here's another shocker. It's used in compact discs, DVDs, and even Blu-ray discs as well. So that stack of CDs you have in your closet may actually contain gadolinium compounds. Beyond that, gadolinium has been used in cosmetics and ceramics, which means that there are environmental and household pathways of exposures we don't usually think about. So the key takeaway here is gadolinium is not just a medical problem, it's an environmental and consumer product problem too. That makes it harder to avoid and reinforces the importance of helping the body eliminate it safely once inside. When we look at the numbers, gadolinium-based contrast agents are not some fringe chemical. These are given on a massive scale. Globally, we're looking somewhere between 30 and 59 million doses every single year. And in the United States alone, that can translate to about 12 to 18 million procedures annually. Up to 15% of the gadolinium may be dechelated or become unbound in vivo or in the body. And there is no safe amount for the body. Now, if you look at the official data, you'll see reported acute reaction rates in the range of 0.01 to 0.3%. That might sound small, but let me be very clear. Those numbers represent only the tiny fraction of people who had an obvious reaction at the time of the injection. What's far more concerning and far more underreported are the delayed injuries that manifest as new constellations of symptoms days, weeks, or even months later. Most people never connect the dots back to their contrast-enhanced MRI. And when we examine retention, the difference between contrast types is staggering. Linear agents are much less stable. They release gadolinium into the body at levels anywhere from 3 times higher to over 180 times higher than the macrocyclic agents. That's not a small margin. That's orders of magnitude more toxic metal left behind in the brain, the bone, the tissues. And while macrocyclics are more stable, they are not risk-free. Even those so-called safer agents still deposit gadolinium, and the clinical outcomes we see confirm that any retention can leave patients suffering. And retention isn't random. It follows patterns. The brain, bone, skin, and even adipose tissue act as a storage reservoir for gadolinium. What's remarkable is that water-soluble gadolinium compounds should not be stored in fat, yet studies confirm they are. This is where Dr. Harold Zeliger's work helps us to understand how lipophilic pollutants can pull hydrophilic metals into fat. Patients experience a constellation of symptoms like chronic pain, neurological zaps, brain fog, and skin changes, just to name a few. Many look healthy on the outside, but inside they're suffering. In the most severe cases, patients develop nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, or NSF, a devastating condition where the skin feels like it's turning into wood, but in severe cases, NSF can attack organs and even be fatal. This slide captures what so many patients with gadolinium retention or gadolinium deposition disease experience. On the outside, they look normal. Their tests often come back within range. And when they try to describe the burning, the pain, the brain fog, or the electrical sensations, they're dismissed. They're told it's all in your head. There's nothing wrong. Get over it. And yet inside, they're suffering profoundly. This is the silent battle. Patients withdraw and stop talking about their symptoms because the disbelief and judgment from family, friends, and even doctors often hurts more than the illness itself. It's important we recognize this reality. Just because someone looks fine doesn't mean they are fine. And until awareness catches up, those patients carry the double burden of the condition itself and the isolation of not being believed. In 2017, the FDA issued a black box warning, the strongest warning they can give for all gadolinium-based contrast agents. But what does that really mean? It means the agency finally admitted what many patients had already been experiencing. Gadolinium does not fully leave the body. It can persist in the brain, the bone, and the skin. And this is true even in patients with perfectly normal kidney function. But here's the real problem: informed consent. Most patients walking into an MRI suite are not told that the gadolinium may stay in their body indefinitely. They aren't told that there are safer macrocyclic agents versus linear ones, and they aren't told about the possibility of long-term symptoms or that alternatives sometimes exist. So we have this paradox. The FDA has formally acknowledged the risk, yet the majority of patients are still injected without ever being given the information needed to make a truly informed choice. That's a consent gap, and it's a critical issue for both medical ethics and patient safety. Now let's dig into why gadolinium can persist in the body and trigger long-term problems. Dr. Brent Wagner at the University of New Mexico has shown that gadolinium doesn't just stay as a dissolved salt, it can form nanoparticles. When gadolinium interacts with oxalic acid, a common compound found in foods like spinach and nuts, it precipitates into gadolinium oxalate salts. These are insoluble and tend to lodge in tissues, resisting clearance. Electron microscopy has confirmed these nanoparticles inside kidney tissues in both human biopsy samples and rodent models. They're not just passive deposits, they disrupt mitochondria, create vesicles, and provoke inflammatory responses. Wagner's group also has discovered that repeated GBCA exposures seem to prime bone marrow-derived fibrocytes, which then drive fibrotic changes. This helps explain why conditions like nephrogenic systemic fibrosis can appear even in patients who had only moderate or single exposures. Complementing this, Dr. Harold Zeliger's work explains how mixtures of lipophilic pollutants can allow water-soluble metals like gadolinium to cross into the fat storage depots, an important insight since we now know GAD has been detected in adipose tissue. Put together, these findings explain the paradox. A so-called water-soluble contrast agent can become locked into multiple tissue compartments, brain, bone, skin, and fat, where it causes ongoing damage. So let's talk about available options to deal with gadolinium toxicity. Chelation uses agents like EDTA and DTPA, including the calcium DTPA and zinc DTPA, to bind metals in blood so kidneys can excrete them. It can help with circulating gadolinium, but doesn't reliably reach deposits in bone, brain, or fat. It's invasive, costly, and can strip good minerals, and usually isn't covered by insurance. Plus, there's travel accommodations that could add expense. NBMI, also known as OSR, Erminix, or Meramide, is designed to penetrate cells and bind metals while reducing oxidative stress. Current evidence suggests more sequestration than proven elimination. It's investigational, not generally available, and not covered by insurance. But when it's approved by the FDA, I would champion this as a completing strategy alongside detoxination. HOPO shows strong binding to gadolinium, and in preclinical work boosts excretion and lowers tissue levels. It's promising, but still experimental. Access is limited to trials, costs are unknown, and there's no insurance coverage at the time of this recording. Detoxination, on the other hand, mobilizes stored toxins with niacin and delivers them to the detox pathways of sweat and bile for removal. Then binders prevent reabsorption. It's home-based, cost-contained, and we have lab-confirmed gadolinium excretion with meaningful clinical improvements since 2019. 4 total rounds, which is recommended to detox gadolinium, typically costs around $2,800 with no additional travel expenses. While it isn't currently covered by insurance, with a doctor's recommendation, your HSA or FSA may cover the sauna costs. And here's where detoxination really stands apart. When we use niacin in therapeutic doses, we trigger what's called rebound lipolysis. This liberates fat-stored toxins, including gadolinium, at around 3 times normal levels. The well-known niacin flush isn't just a side effect. That cutaneous vasodilation represents toxins being pushed into the dermal circulation. What's fascinating is that the mobilization and handling of those toxins can continue for up to 72 hours after a single dose. During that time, they will either be eliminated, bound in the gut, or resequestered back into tissues. This is why we recommend a 30-day program. Daily dosing with niacin and light exercise ensures that each daily session keeps moving bloodborne toxins into the dermal layers where they can be removed by sweat. Sweating then becomes the body's excretion pathway. Through sebaceous sweat, we see the release of lipophilic pollutants, and through eccrine sweat, we see excretion of metals and water-soluble toxins that the liver cannot handle. At the same time, binders capture toxins that re-enter the bile and cycle through the gut, reducing the chance of reabsorption. And we support this whole process with targeted nutrients and electrolytes, which keep this detox method safe and effective. This coordinated system, niacin flush, daily mobilization, sweat, excretion, and binder support, is why detoxination is both holistic and yet clinically powerful. One of the most important tools we have in detoxination is zeolite, clinoptilolite. Animal studies on gadolite, an oral suspension developed for MRI imaging of the gastrointestinal tract, demonstrated that clinoptilolite binds gadolinium strongly and effectively. This confirms its role as the most powerful binder available for gadolinium detoxification. In practice, it helps capture gadolinium mobilization from tissues and prevents reabsorption. After a meeting I had with the pioneer of clinoptilolite zeolite for detoxification, Micah Portney, I now recommend Zeolite Pure by Zeo Health Limited. I will link to an article I wrote on the safety and benefits of zeolite in the video description for those who want to explore the science further. Detoxination has a solid foundation in published science and clinical practice. Peer-reviewed studies have shown that both sweat and stool are routes of elimination for heavy metals and persistent organic pollutants. These findings are backed by case studies in very different populations: veterans, 9/11 first responders, meth-exposed police officers, and chemical workers exposed to PCBs and hexachlorobenzene, all of whom demonstrated reductions in body burdens and measurable improvements in health and function. These results haven't stayed hidden. They've been presented at international and U.S. scientific conferences, and importantly, they've been shared with the key health and regulatory bodies. My father, Dr. David Root, who was invited to present this research to the World Health Organization, the International Labor Organization, the United Nations Environment Program, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and even the U.S. Department of Defense. That level of recognition shows how seriously this work has been regarded at the highest levels of occupational environmental health. Finally, for anyone who wants to dive deeper, a full list of studies and outcomes is available on our studies page. You'll find the link in the video description. Now, I want to share a recent case study of a client that helped me to better serve gadolinium-poisoned individuals. Marcia Sabol, a nurse, had 32 gadolinium injections over the course of 8 years. She became disabled, bedridden, and hopeless. I saw in a post on a Facebook group that she had been taking niacin using her sauna, but wasn't experiencing any noticeable benefit. So I reached out to her, and we began working together on a proper detoxination process. After her third round, she was functioning again, and by the fifth, she had achieved her dream, which was to be able to dance again. And her transformation was remarkable. And here we see Marcia's stool testing for gadolinium. In January 2022, her levels were nearly 0.9 milligrams per kilogram. That's far above the reference of less than 0.03. After more detoxination programs, her March 2022 result was back inside the reference range. Then in May of 2023, her stool showed a 0.4 milligrams per kilogram, which is still elevated, but 50% of what it was before. But it also proves that she was continuing to excrete gadolinium long after her MRI, her last one. Here's why that's important. This confirms that gadolinium isn't just sitting there, it actually cycles through enterohepatic recirculation. That means that the liver is trying to get rid of it by dumping it into bile, which carries it into the intestines. But unless we intercept it, some of it can get reabsorbed back into the blood. And in Marcia's case, she was using that zeolite, which prevented gadolinium from being reabsorbed, so it was eliminated in the stool instead. And this is a key point. Binders make the difference between mobilization and true detoxification. So these test results are not just numbers, they're proof that detoxination works with the body's natural elimination systems to finally break that cycle and move toxins out. Marcia shared this interesting experience where she wore a clean black sweat jacket during a sauna cycle, and after it dried, there was a silvery white layer of material that we do believe was gadolinium dust. One of the things that makes gadolinium uniquely harmful is that it doesn't just linger in the body. It actually acts as a calcium channel blocker. Calcium is one of the body's most critical signaling elements, and it's how muscles contract, how nerves communicate, and how the heart beats in rhythm. When gadolinium blocks those pathways, it doesn't just add one more toxin layer into the mix, it interferes with fundamental biological functions. For patients who already had stacked conditions, the very reasons they were getting the MRIs in the first place, this adds another layer of complexity. That's why Marcia Sabol's case was so pivotal for me. By walking with her through her detox journey, I learned just how important it is to tailor the detoxination program when gadolinium is involved. It's not just a one-size-fits-all solution. Every person comes into this with a different history, a different body burden, and a different set of vulnerabilities. That's why I strongly recommend working with me directly. My remote detox coaching ensures that you aren't left guessing or going it alone. Together, we can make your running the program as safely and effectively as possible with adjustments made for your unique needs. Detoxination is powerful, but when gadolinium is involved, it becomes critical to do this right. You need someone who understands the science, the pitfalls, and the safest path forward. That's where my remote coaching comes in. So when you work with me, you're not just buying a program, you're gaining a guide who walks with you every step of the way. Here's what's included: a step-by-step video tutorial course to master the process, the Detoxination Protocol Guidebook with clear, detailed instructions, my personal guidance in acquiring the exact consumables you'll need, a live training session to ensure you know how to run the protocol correctly, a personalized workbook tailored to your unique health history, unlimited support and coaching. You'll never be left with questions unanswered, ongoing guidance throughout every program round, start to finish, and your entire household, up to 4 family members, can be included under one roof. It's not just about detoxing, it's about doing it safely, effectively, and with the right support. With my coaching, you'll know exactly what to expect and what to look out for and how to adjust if challenges arrive. You don't have to face this alone. With my coaching, you'll have a partner in your recovery. So gadolinium toxicity is real. Detoxination provides a safe, natural pathway forward. The evidence, the case studies, and the patient stories prove recovery is possible. So know that there is hope. And to learn more, I recommend you learn more about Debbie Heist-Lambert. She has done tremendous work to humanize gadolinium toxicity. Her book, Gadolinium Deposition and Toxicity, Humanizing a Life-Changing Event, and her Facebook group and her outreach help patients, professionals, and regulators understand the reality of this issue. And as we close, I want you to know that I'm very accessible. If you're struggling with gadolinium toxicity or if you're simply unsure where to begin, let's talk. You can schedule a complimentary consultation with me at heal.me/detox. And before we meet, you'll fill out a health history questionnaire so I can get a clear picture of your situation. And then during our meeting, we'll discuss your case in detail, answer any questions you may have. And if you're considering purchasing a sauna, which I strongly do recommend, I'll address your specific sauna-related concerns as well. This consultation is a safe, no-pressure space where we can determine your next best steps. I want you to feel supported, heard, and confident that there's a path forward. The information is very, very important. I've actually now worked with well over 200 clients who have gadolinium toxicity, and I can tell you that the stories I hear are very, very shocking. I know people are bewildered, very disappointed that they're not getting the support they needed, and that they feel like there is nothing they can do, especially if there's nobody nearby that can do chelation. But I can tell you that our protocol does not require chelation, and also that if you do have chelation during our program, the results do improve. In fact, one of the reasons why chelation on our program, or I should say the practitioners who have been administering the chelation have seen far better results because of the rebound lipolysis that niacin induces. This is where the toxins are liberated from fat at 3 to 4 times normal levels. So just be aware that our program does not require any kind of chelation, but if you're doing it maybe once a week on the program, it certainly does add an additional layer. And I do think that there are certain types of adjuncts to our program that are valid, and chelation is one of them. So anybody want to raise their hand and or basically unmute?
I have a question for you there, my friend. I wasn't able to raise my hand though.
No worries.
My question for you is, I've done chelation. It knocked me off of my life for a couple months. It was really
Oh,
hard on my body. I've even traveled to Switzerland and I've done the inospherosis treatments. Um, I was a veteran. I was exposed to some really high levels amount of lead and arsenic and a lot of stuff. So I've gotten those levels down. But when that woman that you mentioned, she wasn't responding well to the protocol, I was curious on what she was not implementing.
beautiful,
And
beautiful question.
I plan on meeting with you and kind of going through this with you, but I just was curious on what factors were she was missing, that allowed her to like to make the protocol work.
I'm so glad you brought that up. In fact, that's the first question, because what she was doing different was what we would classify as the niacin flush sauna detox. And just to make a point here, the term that is our title of our book, Sauna Detoxification Using Niacin, is an umbrella term, meaning that any protocol that uses niacin and sauna can fit under that umbrella. So detoxination is our full protocol, which actually utilizes a secondary effect that most people don't even know about from niacin. And so most people are aware that niacin induces this flush of vasodilation, where you see the additional red blood cells that are going through those expanded capillaries, and they're bringing those red blood cells to the surface layers where they show up. And so that flush is what most people think of when it comes to niacin, and Marcia was doing that. So she was using the niacin to induce a flush and then getting into the sauna, which is a valid type of method, but not when you have gadolinium toxicity. It's not enough. But we do recommend that particular format under the niacin flush sauna detox, which in my Facebook group, there's a file in the files section that has the instructions for doing that method. But the niacin flush sauna detox is only dealing with what's in the blood at the time. So with the detoxination protocol, we're not worried about flush. In fact, the flush will go away because you're using niacin daily, and the flush will just stop happening. But the rebound lipolysis that secondary effect triggers is what makes this program far more effective. And then we've added the binders to it as well, which have also improved the user experience, from headache, nausea, flu-like symptoms, malaise, and all that. But
Yeah.
it's improved the efficacy as well. And by the way, thank you
Okay.
for your service. I bet you were also possibly exposed to burn pits and all of
Yeah,
the,
I slept next to burn pits.
yeah. This program is ideal for you.
I plan on I'll schedule a call with you, and I do plan on I've read your book. I have your book, and I've been kind of looking into your stuff for a long time because I've tried a lot of other things. So I look forward to kind of taking that next step with you.
Absolutely. I look forward to talking with you. Is it Michael I'm here? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Michael. Yes.
Nice to meet you, and I look forward to talking with you. And like I said, I'm very accessible. Just look at my calendar and schedule a time, because my goal here is to get as many people as aware of the program as possible and get you detox, because this is something that most people have never even heard of before, and that's mostly because it comes from occupational medicine. And we were in
Absolutely.
36 years occupational medicine, and then I brought it to the public in 2019 when my father retired. And although he wasn't really thrilled about me bringing it to the public in a book form, because he felt that it should be, monitored by a doctor, the reality is everything about this is 100% holistic, and there are other protocols out there that use the niacin and sauna. I figured, why not show people how to do it right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's people need it.
Yes, I would say everybody on the planet really needs the program, but there are contraindications and preclusions. But we'll talk about those during the meetings when I meet with you guys, because it's important you understand that people who are pregnant or breastfeeding, for example, are not to do a program like this. In fact, it
Yeah.
should have been done months prior to conception. But anyway, the thing is that there are other conditions too that involve things like maybe pacemakers and defibrillators and other heart conditions. But just know that we've got a list of all of the preclusions and contraindications, and some of them are actually able to still allow you to do the protocol.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. I look forward to meeting you.
Hi, this is David. If I could just follow up real quick. First of all, Michael, I'm curious, where in Switzerland did you come? Because I'm actually in Switzerland, and I was just curious about the program you're doing here.
I went to the Swiss Mountain Clinic and I did 2 inospherosis treatments, which is a blood purification treatment that they have where they take a lot of blood out of your body, run it through a filter and put it back in. But it's very hard on the body and it took me almost a whole year to recover from it.
Okay, yeah, I see this used to be called the Paracelsus Clinic, and I actually had a doctor who worked at that clinic, but who did chelation. But anyway, I was just curious. The other question I have for you, Dan, is are there people who have, I mean, MRIs are routine, right, in today's day and age. You get I mean, I've had, I think, 2 or 3. One from a knee injury, another one about a little more, yeah, a year and 3/4 ago, and from then on, I don't know, I developed some allergies and a couple of other things, but I really can't say that that's linked to it.
Were they with
And so,
contrast?
yeah, of course they were with contrast. So, and I was told then later that, well, that just then comes out on its own. And yeah, exactly. I didn't at some point I stumbled across it, but I'm just curious, are there people who get MRIs and don't develop any problems with it? I
There are
mean,
certainly people who've had plenty of or have had MRIs and have not experienced symptoms. And I will actually qualify that by saying they haven't experienced the symptoms yet, because more than likely something will happen where there'll be a tipping point. And the gadolinium was there, but they weren't experiencing symptoms. But then another insult occurs where maybe another MRI with contrast, for example. But even like implant can a metal implant can be the tipping point or the trigger. As some of you may know, I have been consulting with Dr. Scott Schroeder, who is the person that's bringing to the public's forefront the issue of galvanism when there's bimetals in the body. And this is a whole area that people need to be aware of, because the findings are remarkable that the bimetals in the body are creating voltages and currents because you become a biological battery. And so you're getting these tremors and these paralyses and things that are you're not even thinking that they're related to metals in the body. And gadolinium is counted as one of those metals. But let me just say that the reality of it is there's a lot of people who are being adversely affected by gadolinium, and the only thing they've known about is chelation. But and now the HOPO, and of course OSR are some other options. But I don't consider those detox agents. I consider those as essentially binders. Now, HOPO, I don't have enough experience with. Apparently, it is able to be excreted through urine, but OSR is not designed to actually improve the elimination of whatever it captures. But what it does do very well is it renders them inert, so they are no longer capable of providing oxidative stress. So that's why I consider OSR as a perfect adjunct to our program, but I can only really do that if it's FDA approved.
okay. All right. I had developed some conditions apparently that are supposedly autoimmune. Is that something that can be triggered by gadolinium? Because this happened after the MRI, after the last MRI I had.
Absolutely. Autoimmune conditions are linked to environmental toxicity. There's no doubt there.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, David. Catherine, was that you that was trying to ask a question?
Yes, thanks.
Please.
How hard is the high dose niacin on the kidneys? I only have one kidney.
Okay, that's a really good question. In fact, have we actually had a consult?
No, I'm going to set one up for next week.
Because I recently did speak with somebody who had only one kidney, and I believe that was actually from birth. It wasn't removed.
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway, just know that the kidneys are the least to be involved with our program because we're pretty much offloading most of the detox functions from the other organs and bringing them out through the skin and picked up by binders. That doesn't mean to say that they're not going to be involved, but the liver is going to take the brunt of it. So there's a lot of supporting aspects to the program that do help the organs and do help the liver to accomplish its task. So it's not just about sweating. There's supports for pretty much all parts of the body that are involved. And it is something that with one kidney, I would want your primary care practitioner to learn more about the program first and then decide whether or not they think it's going to be okay for you. But for the most part, I would say your kidneys are not going to be totally overwhelmed by what we're doing, especially if you follow the protocol.
Which to me sounds like it'd be better than chelation.
I would say it probably would be because the kidneys would have to deal a lot with the chelating agents. So yeah.
Okay, I don't have anyone to do chelation, to be honest, but one of the reasons I haven't been as persistent at finding someone is because I've been worried about the impact on the kidneys. So when I was
Sure.
reading about this, I was hoping it might be better for me. Thank you.
I believe it would be, but I would prefer to get a blessing, if you will, from your primary care practitioner. And by the way, there was something in the presentation that I really didn't flesh out greatly. I talked about there being about a $2,800 cost to do the program, but I didn't really spell out what that meant. The reason that I have that as like a minimum entry for the doing the program, even 4 rounds, is because you can purchase a Therasage portable sauna for $12.99. That's the last time I checked. And then my coaching $4.99, and then the kit for the supplies that you'll need is $230. So when you add up, those costs plus if you're going to do the program more than once, which I recommend for gadolinium toxicity, I'll come back to why. But just know that the kit would be the one thing that you're going to purchase each time because I work with you for every time you go through the program for that one-time fee. Now, why would you want to go through, or why would you need to go through it multiple times? It's because in 36 years of occupational medicine, we've published over 15 papers. Some of them didn't make it to online access, but there's over 15 papers that have been published and plenty of presentations, as I mentioned. But the average body burden reductions on a 30-day program are about 33%. So you're getting 1/3 of the body burden reduced. And in fact, in some toxins, it's 65%, but I'm basically giving you a 1/3 concept because that's a safe way to look at it. It's not a one and done. You should plan to do the protocol a few times. And if gadolinium is involved, I strongly encourage 3 to 4 times.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I look forward to speaking with you. All right. Anybody want to? Yeah, go ahead. Anne.
I'm calling from Germany, and I was severely poisoned in 2021 after 6 MRIs within 2 years. Yes, and so far I had a kidney surgery as well. That's why they did the diagnostics, and but I only lost the tumor, no kidney. I still have both kidneys. And I always had normal kidney values. Nevertheless, I got really, really sick in the beginning, which was delayed as well. So I didn't realize for 2 years, or I thought it's maybe corona or any other disease. Yes, and I tried a lot, like in a natural way. I did TCM and a lot of supplements so far. I got much better in terms of everyday life, but I still have severe flares. When
Okay.
I try like chlorella or modifiziertes Citrospektin, I tried stuff like that. I didn't try zeolite so far, and that would be one question for you, because I was wondering, are there alternatives? I remember when I went to a toxicologist here in the beginning, he told me he wouldn't recommend zeolite because it's likely to be contaminated with heavy metals as well.
I'm
So I
glad you brought
never
that up. I'm going to cover that
avoided
for you.
that.
I'll cover that for you. In fact, may
Okay.
I go ahead and just interject right here because that is such the fallacy that people have. In fact, I did write a complete article for basically debunking those myths. The thing is that it is true that there will be things like gadolinium and other heavy metals in zeolite. That is true. But just because it's in there doesn't mean that it's going to release it into the body. And in fact, you would have to heat the body to 400 degrees Celsius or 752 degrees Fahrenheit in order to make zeolite release that into the body. And of course, at those temperatures, you'd have a bigger problem. But anyway, the stomach acids are not going to release or any of the metals in there. But what it shows is that the zeolite is going to bind with those materials. And that's the key here. I've seen plenty of articles where people have said that they found gadolinium in the zeolite, and it's like, great, that shows that it's going to pick it up. So the article I wrote is called "Clinoptilolite, Is It Safe?" or "Zeolite Clinoptilolite, Is It Safe?" And
Okay.
so it's in my blog at Get Detoxinated. In fact, it's going to be linked in this particular description of the video.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have more you wanted to add, though? Because I did interject.
No, the other question I would have is it possible to do your program also with regular sauna, or is it less effective then?
Great question. So for 36 years, all we had were dry saunas or Finnish saunas, the traditional type, and they do work well. But there were several things that occurred between the time we were in occupational medicine and today that have allowed us to improve the efficacy, the user experience, and the time commitment. So the thing about dry saunas is you'll probably need to spend some more time doing the dry sauna version. In fact, in an infrared sauna, we have 75 minutes as the ideal, minimal amount of time, broken into two sauna cycles, a 45-minute sauna cycle and a 30-minute with a cool down break in between. But then there's also the dry sauna version, because they tend to run at extremely high temperatures. They're going to be running in Fahrenheit terms about 180 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. So in that context, people can't sit in the sauna for more than 15 to 20 minutes before they have to cool down. And it's because of those repeated cycles of heating and cooling that it can take so long, because the goal here is to get the core temperature up to a point where the sebum in the sebaceous oil glands is going to melt. And that lipid-based material adds to eccrine sweat, and it feels slicker on the skin. So you're getting a good sebaceous sweat when the sweat feels a little bit more, slicker or oily. And that's where lipophilic toxins are going to come out. And so we term that, by the way, sebaceous sweat. You won't find that in the dictionary or a medical, article, but it makes the explanation easier if you just say sebaceous sweat, because it's a combination of eccrine and sebum, eccrine sweat and sebum. So, but in a dry sauna, you may want to do about 90 to 120 minutes, just to give you an idea, with cool down breaks in between.
Okay, fair enough. So it's a better choice to buy a infrared sauna
I
instead
would
of
suggest it strongly.
regular one. Yeah.
There's a place for dry Finnish saunas. Absolutely, they are great for social gatherings, especially like the Finnish community. They definitely have learned how to use the sauna for social gatherings and things like that. In fact, I know that some people take their babies in, not for very long, but they start the babies doing the dry sauna, very early, and it's a thing where the dry saunas there's a huge following, And in fact, I grew up a dry sauna, so I know that following. But for a detox, to get the best results, you really need a good infrared sauna.
Okay, thanks a lot for the explanation.
My pleasure. I see Renee's got her hand up.
Yes. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good, thank you. How you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, I just have a couple questions. Have you worked with anyone that has NSF or PSS, which I've been told is pretty similar, the systemic sclerosis, where it's not just the skin, but it could be the organs, but specifically the skin, meaning making it very difficult to sweat?
Yeah, in fact, there are people I have worked with who have early stage NSF. That's something that I'm not going to be able to make any kind of statement that we're reversing NSF. I can say, though, that the condition is going to be slowed down, if not stopped. But I can't say we've ever seen in the short period of time we've been working with gadolinium, which is since 2019, that anybody has had demonstrable changes in the wooded feeling. So if that wasn't clear to most people, NSF can make the skin feel like it's turning to wood, it actually thickens up quite a bit, and that can affect the organs. So the thing is that there's no studies or anything I can point to that show that there's improvements with NSF, but going through the protocol should slow it down or stop it altogether, halt it in its tracks.
Okay, even if the skin is so thick that you're not really sweating in those areas.
In those areas, yeah, but other areas of the body should not be affected, so they'll be able to sweat.
Okay. Okay, and then going back to your beginner protocol, is there a contraindication in timing the niacin with the charcoal, the binder? Because I know one of the, I can't remember who it was, the company I get the charcoal from or the company I get the niacin from, they don't like you to take those things close together. But if I probably would want to take a charcoal supplement before getting in a sauna. If I'm just doing your level 1, not your full detoxination protocol.
Right. I always recommend zeolite over charcoal for the niacin flush sauna detox version. Zeolite is safer for long-term use. It's also more broad spectrum for picking up different types of materials. It uses 3 different forms of binding action. The first one being absorption. Second one is adsorption. And then there's also the ion exchange. Anyway, the thing is that it's a much better material for helping to clean the bile acids. And when gadolinium is involved, it's truly the better binder than anything else. But charcoal we do use on the protocol. The full detoxination program does use it because it adds another layer, especially when there's mycotoxins or biotoxins involved. So, but yeah, as far as the spacing between the charcoal and the niacin, absolutely. In fact, I prefer that when somebody takes niacin, that the only thing they have is water when they're on the niacin itself. In other words, while it's metabolizing. And if you really want to get a good flush or feel that flush, if you drink a hot coffee or a hot tea, any hot fluids are going to really intensify the flush. So but the charcoal definitely is something you want to take away from the niacin.
Okay, so from what I think I just understood you say, it would be best to just do the niacin for the level 1 protocol, and then get in the sauna. Don't take any binders, and then maybe take your binders at a later time in that day or evening.
Yes.
Because I know the folks at Therasage, they kind of don't want you to get in the sauna unless you take a binder within like 30 minutes of getting in the sauna. So there's a lot of conflicting information. That's why I thought I'd ask.
Right. Well, again, if zeolite were the binder, I would have no problem with it. The thing with activated charcoal that I don't like while doing a sauna and close to doing sauna, as far as if you're doing the niacin flush sauna detox, all bets are off when you're doing detoxination because you take the charcoal when you go into the sauna. But the thing about it is that when you're doing the full protocol, you're also taking supplements. You're replenishing minerals and electrolytes. On the niacin flush sauna version, that's up to you. If you want to do electrolytes and minerals, you're only doing a 30-minute sauna. I usually don't do electrolytes after a 30-minute sauna, and I do sauna daily. So just know that I've learned that I don't need to. But the thing with the activated charcoal is that it's known for picking up minerals. So that's
wow.
something that you need to be aware of. Zeolite will actually add minerals. It comes preloaded, and this is where that ion exchange thing comes into play. So it comes basically preloaded from the environment that it was formed in. And for those who don't know anything about zeolite, zeolite is a volcanic ash, and it transforms into these zeolite, one of them is clinoptilolite, but zeolite compounds that are basically luminous silicate cages that have a negative charge, and they pick up from their environment some of the things that are positively charged and other things that are just minerals and things. So when you take zeolite, it has no high affinity for these minerals. And so through what's called an ion exchange, it will release calcium, magnesium, sodium, zinc, any of the main minerals that it has back into the system in favor of picking up higher atomic weighted materials. So this is one of the things that makes it so unique to me, I think, as far as binders go. There is actually a better binder than zeolite, but it's not easily found, especially in the best form. And that's green clays, which if I had a good source of green clays, I'd be referring people to that. But zeolite is readily available, and it's a very, very strong binder. And animal studies do show that when they've fed the cattle, who are the study group, the zeolite, and compared them with the control group, they find that the study group always has a higher nutrient density.
Okay. So in other words, the zeolite's not going to cancel out what the niacin is doing if you're doing that basic
Correct.
protocol. Okay.
Correct.
Excellent.
Daniel, can you hear me? This is Brian.
Hi, Brian. Yes.
Yeah, we talked before. I just wanted to review the topic of detoxing from mold versus metals. Can you comment on the use of zeolite or the binders and the mechanism of action of how mold is removed by binders versus like a metal like gadolinium?
Sure. In fact, zeolite is not the recommended binder for mold. So when I learned more about a person's case and what their toxicities, known toxicities, I hope, when I learn them, I will be able to make recommendations on the different binders that somebody should be taking. So activated charcoal is one good for mold, and so is bentonite clay. Even better is enteros gel, or if you can get the prescription cholestyramine. So those are better for mycotoxins, but because mycotoxins are fat soluble and will store in the tissues, our program is very well suited to detox mold. And we've been doing that for decades. I mean, this has been a known thing for us. But if there are thriving mold spores in the system, there's, of course, other mechanisms or other protocols people could look at to help with that. But one thing that I've been very fascinated with is the idea that at temperatures over 133 degrees, if you breathe in through your nose, for example, the opportunistic pathogens and molds and things like that tend to break down. And because, the nasal cavity is the coolest part of the body, and it's where things are prone to thriving and starting off. So if you breathe in through your nose like I do in my sauna, because I run mine around 140 degrees, just to give people an idea, you can actually start to break down those opportunistic things and help prevent them. So, and by the way, folks, I do sauna daily for 30 minutes. And I went through this program back in 1986. Back then, though, it was a 5-hour-a-day ordeal, and there were no binders. And this was 1986 that I went through the program. And the only time I can remember being sick ever since then was when I had a tooth abscess that I was treating with MMS, and I ran out of the chlorine dioxide materials. And it necessitated that I get some antibiotics, but that was a few decades back. Anyway, this program and doing sauna on a regular basis has kept me healthy at 62. I turned 62 this year. So just know that having a sauna is one of the best appliances you can have for your health. And what I love to term as health span, because living a really healthy lifestyle and using sauna on a regular basis allows me to know that I'm going to be into my older years and not worry about, what medications I should be taking each day. All right. I guess, Brian, as far as your question goes, the difference between doing a mycotoxin type of detox versus a gadolinium detox, I think it really has a lot more to do with like with gadolinium, for example. There are modifications to the protocol that need to be made, and that's because gadolinium is a calcium channel blocker, and if we don't cover that, then there are certain elements of support for this program that are not going to be utilized. That would be the calcium and magnesium that we use. So there are things that we must do to improve that, and vitamin D3, K2, and an MCT oil base would be something that would be changed. There are other things, but just know that based on straight mold mycotoxins, we would just make sure that you're incorporating the binders that are known to improve detoxing of mycotoxins.
So you said activated charcoal would be sufficient. I've just my own personal experience. I have used cholestyramine for my own detox in the past. I'm kind of at the, kind of tail end of my probably detoxification process. But you were saying activated charcoal still would be effective?
Yes, and bentonite clay is even more effective, I would say, for mycotoxins.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
And don't forget enteros gel. In fact, if people have leaky gut, which is very common because of toxicities. Not only do I have the gut terrain reset you can look for on our website and the Facebook group, but just know that enteros gel is very, very helpful for leaky gut situations. The way it works is different than any other binder.
Okay, thank you.
What was the zeolite you recommended, Dan? Is that on your website?
Yeah, it is. I've switched from Hyaltrophin to this particular brand, the Zeolite Pure, because I met with Micah Portney, who owns the company, and he is the pioneer. He's the pioneer of using zeolite clinoptilolite in detoxification, and I learned a lot from him. And I had some myths and things that were incorrect, like the metal. Because Hyaltrophin on their label says don't use metal. He told me that there's no reason that you can't use metal spoons when you use it. So that was something that I had incorrect. And I'm willing to change what I'm doing because of the information being more updated. But anyway, the Zeolite Pure is the brand that I definitely endorse. But if Hyaltrophin is more affordable and it does have a bit more product, I mean, it's the difference between 400 grams versus 454 grams. So just know that if you wish to use the Hyaltrophin, I'll always recommend the 3x TMA over their other size particles. So 3x and TMA are telling you what size particle, they're the smallest particles they make. So that's what you want to look for. All right, I got Colette.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hiya. Back for more. Yeah, so you mentioned the work with Dr. Scott Schroeder about the metals and the voltages and currents that it can create in the body.
Yes.
I'm just sort of thinking out loud here. Could that then affect your endocrine system? Could it ramp up your thyroid, for instance?
I'm sure it can do a lot of things because when you have stray electrical currents and voltages, and they are in the microvolt type of ranges, they can still affect the body's functioning. He's the bigger expert on it, but once I learned about the issue, I realized that galvanism is also causing like the titanium plates especially to become corroded. And it breaks down the material. So then you have these free metal ions that are now going to also store in fat and cause the same kind of issues that the other toxins can. By the way, I'm going to put a link in the description of this video to a playlist. It's 2 videos that explain the origins of our program and kind of a brief overview of it, and then the deeper dive into detoxination. So there's 2 videos that are companion videos in a playlist that really do a deeper dive into the mechanism of the program. And so when you see what types of, especially in the part 2 video, you see what types of conditions are caused by environmental toxicity and why, what different mechanisms these toxins cause to produce these illnesses and chronic conditions. So just be aware that video link is going to be in the description.
Brilliant. I'll look out for them. Thank you.
My pleasure. Do we have anybody else want to chime in? Mickey, is that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kept meaning to ask. Can I just ask you to repeat? I'm sure you've explained it before, but I'm wondering what purpose does the niacin serve in the protocol?
Oh, it's great that you asked that. The videos that I just mentioned are going to explain this in a much deeper detail, but I can tell you that the niacin has these two separate functions. It's a catalyst for two different functions. Now, most people know about the flush. That's the redness that is occurring when the vasodilation opens the capillaries and allows more red blood cells to flow through. But in the process of niacin metabolizing, which takes about 2.5 hours in the human body, it depresses the state of lipolysis. And just to give you a background on that, for most people who don't understand how ATP energy is produced, the cells all have mitochondria, and mitochondria are the powerhouses or the engines of the cells which produce the energy we need called adenosine triphosphate energy or ATP energy. And they need fuel. And so the triglycerides, which are the fat in the cells, and there's millions of triglycerides in fat cells, they are broken down in a process called lipolysis into a glycerol and 3 fatty acids. And those become the fuel. So the mitochondria of the fat cell have the fuel right there for them, but the other cells in the body need to have these fuel sources. So free fatty acids and glycerol leave the fat cells to go through to the other cells and fuel them as well. And in the process of those leaving the fat cells, the fat stored toxins are minimally reduced because they're using basically a siphoning effect following these things out of the fat cells. So we get higher levels of the toxins being liberated during normal lipolysis. So this is why you always have blood-borne toxins and why chelation works. But when you take niacin, it inhibits this process for up to 2.5 hours. And once it is metabolized, it allows the body to resume lipolysis, but it will overshoot in a major way, a very predictable way, at about 4 times normal levels. And in fact, you probably also, or some of you have seen the graphic here, but this is what we're talking about. Okay, so this is on page 75 of the book. But anyway, the peak of that rebound is when we see about 3 times, it's almost 4 times to be honest, levels of toxins being liberated from fat over normal. And it's that peak where we start the exercise and the sauna so that you actually are getting those toxins that are liberating out to the dermal regions where you can then sweat them out in the sauna. But some will invariably get back into circulation and go through the liver, and the liver that is unable to break down man-made chemicals and heavy metals will reject them and bring them through the bile acids back into the small intestine, and that's where the binders can then filter the bile acids, so zeolite especially. But the thing with this is that niacin has those 2 effects, and we exploit both of them on both protocols. So the niacin flush sauna detox is just exploiting the flush, and the full detoxination exploits both of those actions until you stop flushing. Because when you're doing our program, you're actually going to stop flushing after about a week. Some people will continue, but the flush is basically mediated, or it's controlled by prostaglandin hormones, which don't regenerate fast enough. So we're going to get way off in the weeds here, but just know that we exploit both the flush and rebound lipolysis in detoxination, whereas the niacin flush sauna version is only dealing with the flush. Well, thank you all for joining me today, and I really am glad that we've gotten this discussion about gadolinium out there, because I feel like there's just not been enough awareness, and especially the awareness that there is a protocol like ours, which is effectively detoxing gadolinium. So feel free to schedule an appointment with me at heal.me/detox. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next round, which will be the first Tuesday of next month. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.